All right, we're talking New York Jets football on the Ourlads Football Network, the Ourlads Football YouTube channel. And this is a live broadcast. So if anybody has any questions, any comments, let us know what's on your mind. And as long as they're cool, we'll reply and maybe post them up here on the screen. So I can't imagine any Jet fans being uncool with their comments, right, Matt?
No, not at all. Why would they be uncool? We're always excited to come in here and talk about our New York Jets. It's always a good time. So looking
Yes.
forward to putting a bow on the draft and all that good stuff.
Yes. And of course, you can check out Matt on the Matt O'Leary YouTube channel. And matter of fact, let's see, I could even let me pop that up here. Actually, I have the depth chart, but I'm going to pop up a few things, including. So if you haven't seen it before, this is Matt's YouTube channel. And of course, he's got no ego. There's the headshot right there, and again there. By the way, what's this Mike doing there? This looks like it's somewhere on location. Where is this?
Yeah, that picture was actually taken in Long Beach on Long Island. So
Okay, it was just
yeah.
for the photo. It was a photo op kind of deal. No,
Yeah,
professional.
so what I decided to do was when I made the venture of really going in and trying hard with YouTube, I wanted like some real photos that I could use on like graphics and stuff like that. So a photographer friend that I know suggested Long Beach because of the lighting, and
Okay,
it came out. I thought it came out good. So
yeah. Matter of fact, look, you got the logo.
the new logo, you
Yeah, it
love it.
was. Yeah, absolutely. Good timing too. If we would have came up with that new logo last year, what a disastrous way to start. So it's almost like, hey, fresh start, fresh new uniforms, all that other stuff. And it's also nice. You did a video, one of your videos, actually right here, shocking ranking video, being disrespected, which we all want. We don't want this team to be looked at like last year because that never goes well. So especially for our organization. So the fact that we're not getting respect this season, which was the whole idea of putting this video together, I think that's a good thing.
I agree. I'm with you on that. I like flying under the radar. Please, doubt the Jets. I don't love the proclamations of saying like, "Oh, this team is going to be, this or that." I would rather be looked at as an overachiever because expectations were lower. So I'm completely in lockstep with you here. I like that they're being disrespected a little bit. That was based off a power rankings that had them, I believe it was 17th, if I remember correctly. In the end.
Okay. Well, that's almost in the playoffs, but that's good. I like it. Okay. So I tell you what we're going to do. And by the way, I just want to remind everybody here on Our Lads to subscribe to the channel, subscribe, like, share, all that kind of good stuff, especially if you want to talk, if you want to hear us talk Jets football. And whenever we do, Matt will be one of the first Jets analysts here on YouTube actually the only one on YouTube that I turn to. We will talk now and then with Ryan Dunleavy, but mostly we like to talk with Ryan about the New York Giants. So he does cover both teams. But here on YouTube, it's Matt O'Leary with the Matt O'Leary YouTube channel. And we also want to remind everybody that you can still order the draft guide. You can get it a PDF version of the draft guide, or if you already have the draft guide, this is the draft review guide from last year. So that's the cover. So it hasn't been out yet, and that's part of the reason why I'm interviewing Matt here is because I'm going to get some juicy info and tidbits that I'm going to use when I am responsible for writing the Jets report on the draft review guide. So that's why I like having Matt on here to get Matt's opinion and insight on what's going on. So again, it's not just for Jet fans. I just concluded an interview with Rashad Beard, who does a great job covering the Carolina Panthers. So we're going to have at least 11 of these because I'm responsible for 11 teams in the draft guide. So I'll be doing 11 of these over the next couple of weeks. And then I get busy pen to paper and then check out the PDF or the hard copy of the draft review guide coming out in about a month. Okay. So I tell you what, couple of ways we're going to break this up, and let's talk about, because one of the other videos you have on here is regarding the week 1 matchup with San Francisco. So I just want to quickly go through this. And obviously, the main reason for this video is the draft. We're going to get into that. We're going to go over all the draft picks and free agents that came after that, and how that is going to affect the Jets depth chart. But I checked out also on Twitter. So I love it, Matt. Everybody's waiting until tonight. But look at this. This is under your Twitter handle, at Matt O'Leary NY. And I'm not sure who your source is, but this is the schedule.
I have it in pretty good faith that this is the Jets schedule. Everything has been confirmed so far. Everything that I've said that has been now officially confirmed. Like Brian Costello just had the 6 primetime games that are listed. The only thing that I am still working on, so if you see me look down at my phone, that's it. There's a chance if you see week 14 is versus Dolphins and week 18 is at Dolphins, there's a chance that those might be flipped, that it's actually week 14 at Dolphins and closing the season at home. So I don't have that answer yet. As I said, I'm trying to get it, but everything that has been officially announced has lined up with this so far.
Yeah, either way, it looks like they're going to end the season with 3 out of 4 on the road at some point. Actually, it would be a lot better if they did switch it than to go back to back on the road. Boy, that would be a really tough way to end the season after the bye.
It would.
I mean, why does it always seem like we have a tough schedule? How can we never get a break?
It would be nice, wouldn't it? You know, a team with the longest active playoff drought, maybe they get a little bit of a break, but unfortunately not the case for these New York Jets. It is a tough schedule. They get San Francisco on the road in week 1. That's, I think, their toughest matchup. It lightens up a little bit after that, which is good, but out of the bye, it's going to be a really big battle, I think, between the top 3 teams in the AFC East fighting for playoff positioning.
Yeah, but you're right. At the beginning of the season, at the beginning of the obviously going to deal with the fact that you're playing San Francisco on week 1 on prime time, but on the road, but you're also going back to back road. So you got a short week already and 2 road games to start the season. But as you said, if you really think about it, if this is a playoff team, and I think we both agree, as long as Aaron Rodgers and the team is relatively healthy, they are a playoff team. So you've got this stretch here, which is not that bad.
No, it's not. Like, as you said, if you want to be a playoff team, you really have to take care of business there and beat up on some of these opponents. You know, when looking at it, and sure, things change, right? Like every year, I think we all like to go and look at the schedule and go win the win-loss game, see which games they're going to win and which ones they're going to lose. Yeah. But there's always a team on your schedule that you think, they're not going to be any good, and then they end up being a good team.
That's one of them.
I can't. Oh, the Texans. Yeah, that's going to be on a short week. That is going to be a very, very tough matchup. So don't sleep on them. But yeah, like moral of the story, right now we could feel a certain way about it. That could change once we get here to the regular season in 2024.
Now, so we have the extra road game this year, correct?
Yeah, it's 9 on the road. That's right.
Okay. At least one of the road games is the London game. So at least that's good. Because there's you've got like 3 out of 4 road here, and you have, as we said, potentially 3 out of 4 here or here. So 2 3 out of 4s on the road. That's a little bit difficult, but hey, it is what it is. Every team has to deal with quirks in their schedule, and I do think that based on that early season look, the Jets should be able to get off to a good start, and that's what you need. This team needs a good start. They got to get some positive vibes in that building. And more important, of course, keep Aaron healthy. So let's go right to it and talk about how Aaron and the rest of the team is going to look after the draft. And one thing I do know is that, and we talked about this when we previewed the offseason, is that, again, Aaron Rodgers just is not the general manager of the New York Jets. I know the media just try try so hard to make Aaron Rodgers, be the focal point, and he's the bad guy, and Joe Douglas is an idiot for listening to Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets are idiots and all that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, I don't see one draft pick or one free agent this offseason that has Aaron Rodgers' name on it.
No, I'm with you. I am in full agreement there. If it was, don't you think Brock Bowers would have been the pick in the first round?
Yeah, right. True.
That's just for starters, but that's a really good call out by you. I think oftentimes people like to say that it's really Rodgers running the show, and sure, we're not naive. Of course, he has influence on some of the decisions the Jets
should.
Yeah, right. And he watched Malachi Corley's tape and really liked Malachi Corley coming out of college, so that has some influence from Rodgers, but it's not all whatever Rodgers says goes. I think it's a little bit more collaborative than the general consensus is.
Okay. Now I did a Jets recap. So we're fortunate that, here it is. Let's get this. I'm going to bring this over because I have all I actually took even some excerpts out of the draft guide. So there's just a few of them. And so I might as well use this for this show as well. But I'm just going to go over this a few times. But the big deal was, of course, getting the extra picks. And we all knew that in order to have that happen, the quarterbacks were going to have to still be available, and they were. And so the Jets were able to just move down one spot so Minnesota can guarantee that they got the quarterback they wanted. And, we can kind of start with the fact that obviously with the first pick that the Jets were able to get an offensive tackle. And again, this is something we talked about. I was 100% on board all through the process that the Jets should use their top pick on an alignment. We have no idea what would have happened if, say, a Dunze was still available. I don't know. I mean, maybe they do go that direction. I don't know. I still don't know. I still think that they would have stuck with this because the offensive line is such a big need for this team. And I'm just happy the way it worked out because right now, as long as Fashanu and Carter Warren develop, I think that the Jets have their future bookends, hopefully for the next, 5 or 7 years.
I agree with you. I think in their mind, that's the perfect plan, is that they have these two stopgap guys in Tyron Smith, who when on the field is very, very good. Unfortunately, as we know, he misses a ton of time. He hasn't played a full healthy season since 2015. Morgan Moses, kind of the same thing. He plays often. Last year, I believe, only missed 3 games, but had surgery this offseason. So both those guys, while solid veterans, there's injury concern. But I think in their mind, their plan A right now is to have Fashanu develop as the left tackle of the future. And I expect him to get on the field at some point this year. But Carter Warren have another year under his belt as well and potentially win that right tackle job in 2025. I think in their minds, that's what the goal is.
Yeah, and again, we know as fans that this was a player, Warren, that had dealt with some injury issues, and that's the reason that he slid maybe a round or two. So we're a couple of years past that now, and that's, who cares? That's supposed to take advantage of something like that. I haven't seen anything yet from him. We really haven't seen anything as fans to know whether or not he has made the kind of strides that they were hoping for, but it does seem like they're pretty confident that he can hold that job at some point in the future. Who knows when that's going to be? We all hope it's 2025, of course, but still, I think that bodes well, especially when you also have the center of the future and the now in Joe Tippmann. And if Elijah Vera Tucker stays healthy, which is a big if, that's 4/5 of your offensive line, and maybe all 5 with John Simpson, who's only 25, I think, right around that range. That's nice to know that if it all works out and you develop these kids properly, the Jets have their offensive line set, their starters set for the foreseeable future.
Agree. And that's such a big reason, I think anyway, why they've struggled so much in this playoff drought is, unfortunately, after they lost Nick Mangold and D'Brickashaw Ferguson, it's really kind of been a rotating cast of characters on this offensive line trying to get it, figured out. Unfortunately, the Mekhi Becton pick being a miss with the injuries really played a big factor in it, and just some guys underperforming. But I think it's trending in the right direction. And Elijah Vera Tucker's health this year plays a really big factor in that, because he's had season-ending injuries each of the last 2 years. But if he comes back and plays a full season, or like very, very close to it, then that makes you feel a whole lot more comfortable about the future of this line as well.
So, what did you think about specifically Fashanu? It sure is nice hearing him talk after the process. You know, it appears that this was where he wanted to go all along. I know the players say that, but you know that was the case just from listening to him. And I think that goes a long way. And the more I hear him talk, and the more I just think about it, oh, this just seems like a really good pick for them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I was really impressed with just how he holds himself and how he handles himself. Like, we know how good of a pass protector he is on the field, but I just love the character guy that the Jets are getting here. I spoke to someone who covered his career at Penn State, and he just said he was a pleasure to talk to every week in the locker room, really knowledgeable, high football IQ. And I think him going back to school last year to finish his degree kind of shows, like, I don't know, like his upbringing, like his parents really hold that to a certain standard or value, and he holds himself to that. And, you know, he's someone who's going to be very easy to root for here with the Jets. So I'm hoping it works out. He's very, very talented, but also a good character guy too.
All right, so that was what the Jets did with their first pick, and again, I'm just going to flash up some of the excerpts from the draft guide. Moving on down, and then we had, and really, of course, the Jets did a lot of wheeling and dealing. Didn't have that second round pick. That was one of the bummers. But with their next pick, the Jets did, as you mentioned, with the wide receiver spot. A lot talking about Brock Bowers, but this was always the idea anyway. Was the way this draft was, it was so deep at wide receiver, and again, you want to throw Brock Bowers as sort of like a wide receiver, fine, but it was so deep that it made so much sense that you handle the offensive line first, then you grab the wide receiver second, because there's so many of them and they were so deep. And that's exactly what the Jets did. And again, you mentioned Corley and whether or not Aaron Rodgers had a lot to say about that. And who knows? It's very possible he did. He needs the quarterback, and hopefully he'll be here for a couple of years. So what did you think about Corley? Because we knew they were going to get a receiver. What did you think about Corley? Was he like high on your list, or was there another receiver that you thought that they could go?
So he was pretty high on my list, especially when they were picking. I would say Roman Wilson was the only receiver that I would have put over him, but I am by no means upset with the Malachi Corley pick, because I see the vision from both the Jets and Aaron Rodgers of why he likes him, because this is someone who you kind of just get him the ball in space underneath and then let him do what he does best. You know, after the catch, he runs angry. I think he has better speed than some people give him credit for. Like, we watch a lot of the highlights or the tape, and he's running over guys, and, you know, because he's so big and physical, that's what we see most often. But I think his speed's a little bit underrated. I think he's going to have an impact in year one. Not saying he's going to be a number one or number two receiver, but as a third option in the slot, I think that's a really good role for him initially. And I think he complements what Mike Williams and Garrett Wilson do well in this offense too.
Yeah, the thing that when I looked at his resume, the thing that I was a little bit apprehensive about was the fact that he was getting most of his touches at the line of scrimmage. And that immediately sends out a little bit of red flags when it comes to route running and route tree and all that stuff. But again, look, that's where it's up to the coaches. It's also up to your scouting. And as this guy, just because that's the way Western Kentucky designed these plays, doesn't mean that it was something that Corley was not able to do. So I'm sure they did their homework. But yeah, again, if he wasn't a Jet pick, I wouldn't even think twice about it, and I would have said, yeah, I'm kind of still not sure about that guy because of what I mentioned. But now that he's part of the organization, you got to dig deeper, and you got to give the coaching staff the benefit of the doubt that they know that there's more to him than just, sort of like being like a Rondell Moore type of player. from who just gets the ball at the line of scrimmage and then you just hope that he makes plays.
That's a really good comparison because it's so easy to go to the Deebo Samuel comparison. And
Yeah.
that's like the high end. We all hope
Yes.
that he becomes Deebo Samuel. That'd be
Yeah.
great. But there's that concern because you have other examples like Laviska Shenault. It was another example from a few years ago in the draft, kind of similar, and he didn't work out nearly as good. So you're right. You can't kind of just pigeonhole him into that role. But at least I think there's a baseline where he could be a functional gadget guy and maybe develop his route tree a little bit more as he grows into the league.
And the other thing, because they even mentioned it, they talked about why it was important to bring him on the team because this is something that's kind of like the room needed, that they lacked. And that was something that kind of surprised me. I've been doing a lot of research over the last few weeks, going into stuff that you just don't have time for during the season regarding stats, player stats, this and that. And I didn't realize that Garrett Wilson has not had a very good time at it, or at least last year did not have a very good time at it regarding breaking tackles, yards after catch, because you think of him as a pretty aggressive player. But that's maybe going to help Garrett out as well. Even though he's the rookie, you would think that, Garrett's not going to be one-upped by some rookie. So maybe that'll put even a little bit more juice in Garrett to want to maybe be a little bit more physical than I guess he just hasn't been lately.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. And I look at Garrett and I think he's elusive. They're a little bit different with the ball in their hands where
absolutely,
I think Garrett's a little bit more finesse and elusive, and you see Malachi Corley a little bit more on the physical side, like you said. But that's a great thing because one, maybe it adds a little bit of competition. They could kind of learn from each other in that way. Or even if that's not the case, and let's say their game, like Garrett Wilson's strength doesn't really improve all that much, or, we don't get as high of a finesse player out of Malachi Corley, well, then you at least have someone who could do one thing, have someone who could do the other, and still have it work in your offense. It's not like you're having repetitive pieces where it's the same, like the wide receivers who just only do that one specific thing. So I think there's nice balance in this receiver core.
Yeah, and that and when we take a look at some of these other players, and we'll talk more about this when we preview training camp. But the Brownlees and the Gibsons, and again, I think I'm pretty sure the only reason that Gibson played last year and Brownlee didn't was because Gibson played special teams. Brownlee seems to be a little bit more polished as a receiver. And then you got even Irvin Charles, who's now all of a sudden, I guess, the new gunner. And then you have Malik Taylor, who's showed some life in the preseason, and even Lance McCutcheon has shown life in the preseason with the Rams. So, and then Harrell, the kid that they signed, has got blazing speed. So there's a lot of nice, interesting youth and depth with this room now. I'm not sure many of them are ready for prime time, but it's a lot more deep, and there's definitely some talent there to work with.
Yeah, there absolutely is. I agree with you as well with your analysis on Gibson versus Brownlee. I wonder how many wide receivers the Jets are going to carry on this roster, and if there's a little bit of a competition between those guys for the last spot. Because looking at it, and with some of the rule changes, I think Irv Charles is going to make this team because of what he can do on special teams. And losing Justin Hardy in free agency, I think, plays a factor in that. So you kind of need to carry Irv. So if you're only going to do 6 receivers, then I think it comes down to one of Gibson or Brownlee. If there's a spot to carry 7, then great. You keep both of them. But it's hard when you're going through this roster right now, trying to, trim it down to only 53 guys, and you might have to make some of those tough decisions.
Yeah, we'll find out when Mike Williams gets back. But look, that's going to open the door during the summer, at least, for a lot of these kids to get extra reps. Did you believe the story regarding Allen Lazard and the Jets are trying to trade him, knowing that he does have the relationship with Aaron Rodgers and that he was probably going to be a different player last year if Aaron Rodgers was going to be playing the whole year as opposed to not? But because the only reason I don't believe it is because who would take his contract? Yeah. I just, what are you giving away for a 7th round draft pick? All that's going to do is maybe you would anger Aaron. I have no idea. I just don't think that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's true, because as you said, who is taking on that contract? So I don't even know why you shop him at that point to, uh, to even just like stir that up. I think
Yeah.
last year after one of the games, Robert Saleh had a quote about Alan Lazard that really stuck out to me. I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially he was asked about Lazard being a healthy scratch, and he at the time said, "Well, he's gonna be here for another year and a half." Granted, he's on a 3 or 4 year contract, so a year and a half, kind of like implying they're gonna get out of this deal after next year. Don't worry,
When
kind of.
they can.
Yeah,
Yes.
but that like he never talks about anyone that way. He loves even the 53rd man on the roster. He'll talk up like he's going to the Hall of Fame. So like when he mentioned Lazard in that way last year, that really jumped out to me. But to go back to what you said, I don't see him as a realistic trade scenario. It's not surprising that nobody bid on it. And I think you're kind of just hoping he could be a functional player. He's not asked to be wide receiver 2 on this team.
No.
If he can be your 4th or 5th receiver and be okay, he's overpaid, but at least you get a functional player.
Yeah. And again, injuries are going to occur, as we well know. So he could end up as an important piece of that receiving core. For anything, he's one of the veterans. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure he might even be the oldest guy in the room. So, which is a good thing that they don't really have a lot of old guys in that receiving room. Who do you like out of the young guys before we move on from wide receiver? Out of all these young guys, Brownlee, Gibson, from what you've seen, Taylor, McCutcheon, Charles, which one do you think has the best upside?
I kind of like Brownlee the best, I think, in that group. In training camp last year, I was really impressed with how he went up and got the football. He was aggressive to go up and catch the football. Granted, you also have to take note, like he's running with the second and third string guys. So, you take these things with a grain of salt, but he's not as good of a route runner as Xavier Gipson. But I think him being an outside receiver, the Jets could use another outside receiver on this roster than another guy that's going to be pretty much exclusively a slot. Like I think Malachi Corley, someone who's just a slot guy. Garrett Wilson can play both, but they like to have him in the slot more. So it kind of feels redundant to me if they were to keep and try to get and develop Gibson. Who knows? Maybe it works and Gibson ends up being just too good. You got to put him out there. But I kind of like Jason Brownlee's game the best out of all of them.
I agree with you. I completely agree. I just don't know what the upside is for Gibson. I think he's going to be a really good above average special teams player, but as a receiver, like a starting slot, well, no. If they really thought he was going to be a starting slot, they wouldn't have went after Corley. So, so I don't think so. I think he's, though, a very good back of the rotation player, receiver, because he is he could be an exceptional returner with some receiving skills. But once you start, pounding this room like they have now with even more talented players, you're just not going to see Gibson as much. Sort of like what happened a couple years ago with Braxton Berrios. Okay, let's move on now. And I tell you what, let's stay with the offense and let's talk about the next pick. Matter of fact, let's talk about the 2 running backs. Let's talk about Allen and Davis. Now, Allen was a little bit more predictable. Davis was the big surprise of the entire draft, considering it came after Allen, and you have Izzy there behind Breece Hall. So let's talk about Allen. What was your overall feel about Braylon Allen coming into the draft? And what do you think about him on the roster now?
I was thrilled with that pick. That was one of my favorite picks from this class because when looking at Joe Douglas's history, every year he's been with the Jets, he has drafted a running back. And I thought if they were to go that route, Allen in the 4th round would be that would be the target. I wouldn't go much, there were running backs who went before him that were, that were taken earlier, which is fine. But for what the Jets need, Allen's big. He's physical. It's kind of the exact opposite of what they had on the roster with Breece Hall's game and with Izzy Abanakanda's game.
Yep.
So I really like that. That's the route that they went for this running back. Hopefully he's good in short yardage situations and down by the goal line. But I'm very excited of what he can do as an RB2. I'm not saying he's going to come into the league and be a starter, but as a serviceable complementary piece at running back. I think he fits that role to a T.
Yeah, what do you think about that role specific? Because there's, I don't know, there's some scouts and some people believe, all right, well, Allen's here and he's going to end up, he's going to be the physical between the tackles, short yardage guy. And some people even kind of comparing him like to a poor man's Derrick Henry style, whatever player. It's like, relax. I just did not see that at Wisconsin. I see a physical player with good size, but I do not see a guy that looks or resembles anything like Derrick Henry,
No.
even a poor man's Derrick Henry. I just think he's a different style of runner, and that's okay. So I'm interested to see exactly what they think and why did they specifically bring him in. But I can definitely see him being the number one guy that they turn to, besides Brees, of course, but for short yardage and things of that nature.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I think some of the it's easy to just look at him and see how built he is and go, oh, Derrick Henry. But you're right. It's not the same. I do, though, think if you watch him last year in 2023 versus 2022, I think he was better in 2022 because
Yes.
Wisconsin's running style was more like up the middle, pound the rock, smash mouth, and they got away from that a little bit last year.
That's a new staff. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So I think the offensive the philosophy change there really impacted him. And with what the Jets did in free agency with bringing back Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith and you bring in John Simpson, I think they're going to try to run like up the middle and with a little bit more power. So I think again, it fits with what the Jets are trying to make their rushing identity.
Okay, now let's talk about Isaiah Davis and also how this affects, if at all, Abediconda. And matter of fact, you can even take a look here because you posted on your channel. You have a video here that's talking about Abediconda as the forgotten running back. And I actually have him on my dynasty team, Abediconda, because I have Brees Hall on my team. So I took Abediconda late as insurance. And I don't really feel, even though I had an opportunity in my last round of our rookie draft to take Braylon Allen, I didn't. And I just like to play another running back better. And I also feel that Abediconda can still be the second best running back on this team. And then they bring in Isaiah Davis, and it's like, well, wait a second. What does this say about Abediconda? My first reaction was, well, it's another offensive skill player. And I don't care what Joe said in the press conference after the draft, talking about, no, it's just the way the draft fell. I don't believe that. I think Joe had an effort out there to bring in as many offensive players as he could. And the more, the better because of injuries. And by the way, we don't know in a couple of years what happens with Brees Hall and his contract. He's a running back. Maybe he's going to be too expensive for the Jets. So why not build that room with as many quality running backs as possible? And if Isaiah Davis was as they thought was that much better than their next draft pick who fit a need, then go after Isaiah Davis. But I don't think that has anything to do with Abediconda. If anything, yes, I think it's a good thing that it'll push him more. Maybe they feel that he could have came back earlier from the injury. I don't know. Maybe they want to toughen him up. I don't know with competition. But I still think it's all good for the Jets to have that much depth in the backfield.
Yeah, I agree. That's a position where there's a lot of turnover with. And as you said, with Brees Hall, you don't know. He's a running back. They very well could just run him out on his rookie deal, franchise him in year 5 and be like, okay, that's it. We used you in your youth. And now you could, someone else can give you the big contract.
Yep.
That's the unfortunate part of the business. For running backs. It stinks, but that's how it is right now. And with Davis, again, kind of fits more along with Allen stylistically for this new Jets rushing attack. And Izzy Abediconda's more of that outside zone Shanahan style running back. And I think the Jets are getting away from that a little bit. I'm not saying that I don't think he's on the roster bubble yet. I think they do carry 4 running backs. They did that last year. So yep. I think Izzy makes the team, but I wonder if his role is going to be more on special teams than one of the backs that's featured after Brees Hall.
You know what I like still about him that I don't know. I know we've seen tape. It's not that Allen or Davis in college, haven't been able to bust it, but that's what Abanikanda specializes in, and that's what makes him such an added playmaker to that backfield is his ability to just break big rushes and to be that lightning to thunder if you have one, say in a type of rotation. We don't have another Abanikanda type on the backfield right now, and I think that bodes well for him.
Yeah, that is true. He is unique in that way. As for Allen and Davis, those guys they're very repetitive. Those guys are very similar stylistically. Where you are right, they don't have that, the prototypical small third down speed back out of the backfield. And I hope Abanikanda could develop into that because
sure.
I liked what we saw from him in the preseason, and I liked his college tape. He didn't do much in the regular season. They didn't use him till the end of the year, but he did have that injury as well, I believe, later in the preseason. So that maybe that lingered a little bit and played a factor for his first season in the league. But I'm not closing the door necessarily on him yet.
What did you think about the Davis pick when it happened?
Honestly, that was probably my least favorite pick. I didn't like going back to running back there twice.
Yeah.
As I said, it's clear that I think the Jets are going to go with a little bit of a different identity with their rushing attack, and they want to be more power, but it wasn't my favorite going back to the well and trading back as much as they did too, right? Like on day 3, I felt like I would have rather taken a swing in the 4th round on either another one of the receivers or maybe an offensive lineman or safety or something like that than go back to running back. So that was probably my biggest criticism of this draft class.
Yeah, we'll find out for sure once we see him play and see how it all works out. There are reasons for it, and a lot of times we don't know what they are until a little bit later on in the process. Okay, so we switch over to defense, and let's start with the Stiggers kid from the CFL. So we kind of all had heard about him. We were following the whole process, and we're getting as much draft insight as we can. So we knew about him, but you don't ever really think you're going to get the player. And when the Jets did, instantly you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, now let me refamiliarize myself with him. And yeah, I can say what you want about the story, and it's a nice story, but I don't care about that. I think what it helps to shape the kid, that's important. And I do think it's an advantage. I know the CFL is the CFL, but it's still professional football. So yeah, he didn't play in college, but playing in professional football is kind of unique. And he is almost also probably insurance in case they cannot re-sign DJ Reed for whatever reason for 2025.
Yeah, I agree with you there with the future of DJ Reed being up in the air. Quantez Stiggers, what a great story, right? Like he goes or is going to go to college, then and COVID year, and his father passes away, so he drops out. Then he signs up for the fan-controlled league, plays really well, gets a tryout in the CFL, plays really well, and then enters the draft. I wonder if he's going to be someone that they try to convert to safety. That's something that this regime has done a lot. They take those corners late in the draft and try to
like it.
Like Jason Pinnock or the LSU corner from Jarek Bernard-Converse was another one that they did that with. So maybe that's his future, but has a little bit of a ball hawkingness to his game. He had 5 picks each of the last 2 years, I believe. So we'll see if that translates.
And then speaking of the secondary, with the last pick of the draft, Jalen Key comes on board. So, yeah, okay, it's a last pick and all. You never know how that's going to pan out. But it would look like there's going to be some competition now in the back of that secondary with Bernard-Converse, who you mentioned, Jalen Key. And I don't know. I don't know what you think. Maybe you can also tell me what you think about some of the other college free agents that came in after the draft, because they did sign a bunch and loaded up the competition for that final spot in the secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with Key as the last pick of the draft, there was kind of for me just like, okay, they need more at that spot. So I get why they went that route. I don't know how well he's going to translate to the next level. He's a little bit of an older prospect, and his athleticism doesn't jump off the page a ton. He was a seventh round pick for a reason, right? Like it's hard sometimes trying to find the silver linings with some of these prospects, but I understand why they went that direction, because you still look at safety as a spot where you need more.
And since we're on defense, let's talk about what happened after the draft, because I think if you take a look around when the draft ended, and if everybody, whoever had the stories of best college free agents available, I'm pretty sure Leonard Taylor was at the top of everybody's list. So for the Jets to get a player that they actually needed for that position, because you were just talking about, well, did we really need to draft a running back in the 5th round? Well, if the Jets had drafted Leonard Taylor in the 5th round, okay.
Right.
I mean, that's even a bargain. Hey, we got Leonard Taylor in the 5th round. That's a good pick. And we have talked about the fact that Quinnen Williams needs a young, productive player alongside of him. It would be nice if they could find that guy. I don't know if Kinlaw is going to be that guy, but who knows? Maybe Leonard Taylor could be that guy.
Yeah, I liked Leonard Taylor. I thought he was going to go in like the 4th round. So as you said, if they were to get him on the 5th round, I would have said, okay, that's fine. And if Davis was an undrafted free agent, like if you flip-flop that, I think I would feel a lot better about this. So we can't knock the grade too much because of that one Davis selection. But you're 100% right. Of the undrafted free agency crop, I think he has the best chance to make this roster.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he doesn't. If he doesn't, then there's something definitely wrong with him. And that's the thing that is the most interesting process. And maybe one day they'll do that. I mean, the Jets YouTube channel, or specifically, they do a really good job with all of their videos as far as the production and all that. We've seen those. But one of the things that I'd like to see them do is actually stuff that we don't know about. I don't need the repetitive behind the scenes players and what are they talking about on the phone, and that's just move on. What I'd like to see is the process of how they handle the free agents, the college free agents after the draft. Like did they know? And if so, when that Leonard Taylor might not get drafted? When did they start talking to his people about, if you don't get drafted, we're going to negotiate a contract for you? These are all things that I'd love to know, especially for a player like Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be really interesting to see. And you're right, we don't get all that behind the scenes looks. You get the phone calls and they speak to all, every positional coach, Woody, Robert Saleh, Douglas, the whole thing. And it's nice. It's cool to see them get drafted and see their dreams come true. But yeah, when do they start the UDFA process, or trying to figure out who is going to be a UDFA? That would be interesting.
And then, and I heard they gave, I heard this, but did they give Watts a pretty good amount of money? Is that, I don't know how that is, like if it's official or when it's official or but that's something I heard.
Yes, I think you're correct on that. You could designate a certain amount of money to these UDFA guys, and I believe he was on the high end of a UDFA contract, so they could like him. I also like the kid McGregor out of Michigan.
Yes.
Those two at edge, both Watts and McGregor, are names that I think you should keep an eye on to maybe make this roster. It's tough because they have a crowded room. But I think there's talent there with both those guys.
Yeah, and we can kind of talk about that, because would you consider, as we talk about what the Jets still need to get done with their roster, every team has a hole here, a hole there. So what did you think? Do you look at edge? Like, did you think that they needed another edge? I don't personally. I believe that Will McDonald is being, undervalued too much by the media. I think they believe that he's just, he's nowhere near where he needs to be. He's a one-trick pony at this point, and they definitely need more depth at edge rusher. I just don't see that to be the case. I'm not saying he's going to have a year or two like Jermaine Johnson, but why can't he? So I think they're in good shape there at edge. I think they have enough depth. But overall, I'm not sure if you have a feel that they needed any more players up front, or if there was another position in general that you think that the Jets are still lacking a little bit depth wise.
So I like their top 3 edge rushers right now that the Jets have with Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, and Hassan Reddick. I think after moving on from John Franklin Myers, I'm slightly concerned. I'm not saying it's a massive concern, but I'm not the biggest of Michael Clemens guys. I don't know if I'm comfortable with him being the 4th edge rusher. So if they could get another name in there, I would feel better about it. Again, I'm not saying that this is going to be the thing that holds them back, but we're talking about like in our dream scenarios. I would probably prefer an upgrade on edge 4.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about injury. Is if you have an injury, everybody moves up, and then all of a sudden, yeah, because I agree. I think they're fine. I think every team that relies on the edge, like the Jets defense does, with their defense specifically, with the rotation and all that, I think they're fine. You need 3. If you have 3, you're good. 4, that's a bonus. But you're now one injury away if Michael Clemens does not improve upon, which was definitely a little bit of a slip from his rookie season. You know, he seemed to play better in his rookie season. Whether that's true or not, I think I think even from what we heard, that was the case. And inside as well, like I said, I mean, Kinlaw is just he's kind of still a project in a way. This is up to Robert Saleh. It's up to the entire staff to try to see if they can get something out of Kinlaw that San Francisco wasn't able to, and that's going to be a big part of this defense if he can.
Yeah, that's really a good call out, because I think Kinlaw's biggest issue was staying healthy in San Francisco. When he was on the field, he was pretty good.
Another one of those guys, injury guy.
Right?
Yeah.
Go figure. He fits in perfectly here with the Jets. But
yeah,
if there was a spot for him to come in and be successful, I do think it would be next to Quinnen and back with Robert Saleh. If he could stay healthy, I think he'll be a good running mate for Quinnen Williams on the inside.
Other than that, depth wise, you're okay. Are you okay with the safety situation? I am. I don't think you have to worry too much. I think it's the same thing. Yeah, if you have an injury, but other than that, you have 3 safeties. It's just I think because they have they're pretty deep at corner. I think that obviously compensates. The Echols thing is interesting with the off the field stuff. But overall, what do you think about the 3 safety alignment right now?
I think that's another spot. Maybe, excuse me, they look to add a veteran too. I like Chuck Clark a lot. I think him being back, and if he's healthy, I think would be an upgrade over what they had last year with Jordan Whitehead. Tony Adams, I think, was fine, and I'm glad that they brought Ashton Davis back.
Yes,
but he came into a nice role on this team last year. But they could probably use another veteran body in that room, because again, we don't really know what Chuck Clark is coming off the injury. Assuming health, I think he could be very good, but it's tough to assume that coming off an ACL.
Have you heard anything at all regarding some of the other players they signed? Like, for instance, we didn't mention Jackson Sirmon, and Jackson Sirmon had a very productive college career. Now, yes, linebacker. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of reasons why certain linebackers don't get drafted in the NFL. That position, Jets only have 2, so you get the point. But Zaire Barnes, here's a guy that you would hope is going to take the next step. I don't know if Jermaine Sherwood has anything left. I don't know if we've seen the ceiling from him. It's possible we have. Maybe he's never going to be a guy that they keep kind of talking about. You mentioned Robert Saleh thinks, a certain way about some of these guys. Well, Sherwood's one of them, as you know. Yeah. He kind of talks this guy up. All right, can we see it, please, now? I mean, it's like 3 or 4. I want to see it. And then Chaz Surratt has shown ability. And I know when you're a quarterback and making the transition as he did in college, and now you're in the pros, it takes a while, but he's a fast kid, and maybe he'll click. But is there someone in that back 7, and including the DBs, Jarius Monroe, Al Blades Jr., so forth and so on, that you've heard anything about?
Not really. There's no one really else after some of the bigger names we just went over that stand out. I think it's going to be hard for those guys to make it, especially like at linebacker, because Surratt is a special teamer. Sherwood is also a special teamer. I think it would be hard to unseat them because the head coach really likes them a lot. He makes that abundantly clear. It's possible, but I have a hard time finding a path for too many other guys.
Yeah, and overall, special teams. Again, we talked about Gibson. They have the two veterans at the kickers, so they really hadn't there wasn't a position that they had to worry about or a unit they had to worry about. And then just also taking a look at maybe some of the other guys. Some people are talking about, well, Brady Latham, can he be a guy that could be like the 10th lineman? I'm not so sure. I wasn't really. I've seen Brady Latham play in college, and I was never really that excited about him. So I honestly don't think he makes his team or comes close to it. Maybe he's on the practice squad. But overall, was there another on offense specifically? Do you think they're going to keep 10 offensive linemen this year?
If they do, I think maybe that's where you see the undrafted free agent in Latham stick. I think there was a reason why he wasn't drafted. I'm with you. He wasn't one of my favorites from this draft class, but they also don't have a ton on the interior of that offensive line depth wise. So if there was a surprise spot, I think that would be it. One of these interior offensive linemen so that they could carry 10 instead of 9, let's say.
Is there a player out there in free agency that you are targeting? Especially, I think the names at safety are more recognizable, but are there any players that you think Jet fans should specifically be keeping an eye on that they might be able to bring in?
What about another Connor McGovern reunion? They did it last year. They signed Connor McGovern late.
Why not?
Yeah, he knows the team very well. I don't think he's a starter anymore, but no. You could do a lot worse as your top interior guy off the bench than Connor McGovern. So I would feel a little more comfortable with him than Wes Schweitzer, I think. So kind of puts everyone else down a slot after that. So they did it on the cheap last year. It was under $2 million, if memory serves correctly. So I think you could do it again.
Are you surprised that he hasn't been signed yet?
I was last year, not as much this year, especially after the injury, because I didn't think he was great when he played. This feels kind of like a spot where either he's gonna come back to the Jets on a 1-year deal, or maybe he's just done in the NFL at this point. It feels kind of late for him at this point. Offensive linemen are a hot commodity usually, so seeing him stick around this long, isn't a great sign for him.
And who do you like any of the young linemen? And again, we'll talk more about this at training camp, but the Newmans, you got Hansen. Hansen had a very good college career. So I think he's an interesting one to keep an eye on. We saw what happened when Newman was thrust into the starting lineup on that freaky game against the Giants. That was such a big story. But do you know or have heard anything positive, or do you have a favorite between any of those, say, no-named young offensive linemen?
Maybe Xavier Gibson, Xavier Newman, just because of how he handled the end of that game against the Giants. He was not supposed to play. He was like their third center in that game. And he comes in and in a huge spot was able to get the ball set. They got the play off and they got the spike so that they would be able to kick the field goal. So I think that was really, really impressive. And who knows, maybe that moment keeps him around a little bit longer. I don't have crazy high hopes for any of those guys, to be completely honest with you, but of the crop, I would think Newman sticks out the most to me.
Okay. Grade. I'm not sure if you gave them a grade, but what would your grade be for how the Jets and Joe Douglas did with the draft this year?
I came in at a B+ for Joe Douglas and the Jets. I think it was a solid draft class. I don't think it was amazing, but
we've had amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, 2022 is amazing. It's gonna be held to a very high standard.
Yes,
should. But I don't think we're gonna look back in a few years and go, this is a disaster. I think we'll look back and go, okay, like, that was pretty good. You got a couple starters and some depth pieces in there. That was a nice draft class from Joe Douglas in this regime. Olu, I really view as a long-term tackle option. I think Corley and Allen are going to be nice depth pieces, but something else, that Jordan Travis, if he develops into a little bit more here, he could change the ceiling of that class and maybe bump it up higher than a B+.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, we did not talk about Travis, and we know we're probably not going to see much of him this year at all, based on his injury and Tyrod Taylor being here. And again, talking about the stats, I was surprised when I looked over and saw that Tyrod Taylor, there were a lot of positive stats from him last year. I didn't realize that he had actually played as well as he did on some of those underlying stats. Just didn't really think that that was the case, especially when you watch the Giants play. But again, we hope we don't see Tyrod Taylor either. But what about Travis? We knew the Jets were going to take a quarterback. There was a lot of talk about Travis being that quarterback. Was that exactly where you wanted the Jets to go at quarterback?
It is. So I was between two names. I was between Pratt and Jordan Travis, and Pratt ended up going way later than I thought. He was in
Yes,
the seventh round.
surprising. Yes,
But basically the whole time, and I kind of leaned Pratt like very slightly. Pratt was my preference, but I kept saying one of either Pratt or Jordan Travis, I'd be happy to come away with. Travis, I think I love his athleticism. To me, it's going to be how he recovers after that injury. I think that's really going to be the big thing, and the arm strength. That may be something that ends up holding him back slightly at the next level.
yeah, and again, hopefully we don't have to see too much of him at all for at least a few years.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes.
And look, he'll get hopefully a couple of years if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. We expect him to be around for at least 2 years, and that'll give Jordan Travis more than enough time in the Jets to find out whether or not they believe, okay, when Rodgers leaves, he's our guy. And I think that's why it was important for them to bring in one of these guys this draft class so they'd have that shot at not having to go back into the well with a top draft pick if they were able to develop someone like Travis and get him at a pretty much of a bargain round a couple of years earlier.
Exactly. I'm with you on that. I want to see him sit, learn for a couple of years,
Yeah,
figure out what he is in 2026 and beyond. But if he gives you anything, that's just a bonus. I'm good with the dart throw that they had.
All right, Matthew, great job. By the way, do you play fantasy football?
I do. I'm a casual fantasy football player.
Regular fantasy, or do
But
you do dynasty?
I don't do dynasty. I'm regular PPR kind of guy. So
Okay. So when you take a look, I know it's a little bit difficult because dynasty, you go really into these rookies, but still, again, just basic talking about regular fantasy. As far as the Jets are concerned, some of these rookies, and maybe if you want to talk about even some of the rookies from last year that could break out, who are you going to zero in on when you draft this year?
from the Jets, the guy
From the Jets, yeah,
I
that you
really
would go,
want,
okay, I might pick him up.
I want Brees Hall bad.
Oh yeah,
That's what I want. That's
yeah.
the big one. I know that's chalk. You got to
That's
probably
easy.
have a top pick, but maybe an under the radar. How about Tyler Conklin as an under the radar guy in fantasy?
Okay.
Because he, I think, has put up average tight end
He
numbers
has.
2 years with horrendous quarterback play. And I do think the quarterback play will be drastically improved this year. So I'll say Tyler Conklin as maybe my sleeper-ish option.
And that's also going to be a big position for us to take a look at camp because of the fact that we're all hoping and got our fingers crossed that part of the reason that they did not go into the Brock Bowers thing was because they do believe that Jeremy Ruckert can be a number one tight end in this league. And I think that's the case. You don't draft a tight end in the third round and think he's going to be a backup. So I still think there's hope for Jeremy Ruckert. They love Yeboah because of his ability to do a lot, especially on special teams. And Aaron Rodgers seems to like this Old Dominion kid after playing a catch with him a lot late in the season. So I think that's a very intriguing unit to keep an eye on during training camp.
I like the tight end room. I think it's a little bit underrated by some people. Ruckert, I'm still not, I'm not throwing him away yet. Let's see how he progresses. And beyond that, they really like Kuntz's ability. Rodgers called him out by name, so we'll see. Maybe it's better than we think.
Next show. Now you basically just put out videos whenever, right? When something comes up, boom, you do it. It's not like you go, all right, well, it's Monday, so I have to do a video. Is it basically just, and do you have a show either in the off season or during the season that you do have a schedule?
Yeah, kind of just react as things come out. Like to do 2 videos a day. The next video is going to be on the schedule. So that's been out. Brian Costello's put it out, and yeah, we're gonna react to that.
Awesome. And again, don't forget, this is the review guide. This is last year's, obviously. So draft review guide's coming out next month. We're going to have the Jets and the other 31 teams. So you're going to see my thoughts, and I'm sure a lot based on our conversation here. So that's why I appreciate it, as always, Matt, for doing this. And can't wait to talk to you again, because that means it's training camp, and that means football will be right around the corner.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on today. Really excited to get into it again in training camp.
You got it. Don't forget, everybody, subscribe, like, and share here on Ourlads, because we have many more of these coming up, including, of course, talking with Matt and Jets football throughout the offseason and 2024.